Okay, I guess I'm not paying attention to you, but it's okay.
I said we're going live.
Okay, I'm not paying. Well, I am not paying attention, so that is probably your fault. All right, let me sign up. Stupid.
Okay, they were live.
Yep, I see it. I'm getting better at this. I don't know if you noticed this. It says this video is private. I can't even see it now. So you banned me. You banned me from the channel.
Why? Hang on a sec. Why is it private?
I don't know.
That's not right.
Oh, now I can see it. What the hell's going on with this stupid thing? I don't know what kind of thing you got going with this French piano here, but this is all straight.
No, hopefully people can see like that.
I am disheveled today. Well, they're notified. They can figure it out. But anyway, let's go. What's going on here?
Well, hopefully people get on here because I don't know what changed in the settings to make the video private.
I don't know. Now we'll just be talking to ourselves. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, but in any case, I feel like right now, maybe this is like John Cena. You can't see me.
No, I can see you.
I was watching some rock videos this morning. Speaking of wrestling, I don't know why it just showed up.
I heard. That's why I put on the Killer Angels soundtrack while I was.
Nobody's on outside of my morning, so I was just watching the.
Hi Kevin. Hi Autumn.
Oh, I guess people are. But it just showed up on the streams. I forgot how funny that was. I used to be into wrestling years ago, back when The Rock was in it and Stone Cold and those guys. I forgot how entertaining that was, and I haven't seen it in years. But it was. I used to go to those shows sometimes too. But anyway,
never did.
So
yes, I was working on my paper that is due Monday.
I've noticed that you've been doing that all week, which is why I had to carry the ball for this podcast episode.
At this point, honestly, and I said this to my instructor, Anita, I said, I feel like I am living with the ghost of Michael Shara. And she looked at me and she's like, yep, I can understand that completely. I do. I feel like I'm living with the ghost of Michael Shara right now.
All right, we're ready to go live here. Ready to go? Ready?
Yeah, we're live. That's why I'm talking. We're live.
I wonder why you're being so talking. Well, I guess we're on. Okay, good morning, everybody.
Well, you said that too.
What's that? I don't know.
You're really disheveled today.
Yeah, I guess so. But it's Saturday morning, which is always a good thing. So here we go with this. So what's going on?
She used to watch wrestling 5 nights a week. Good morning, David. Good morning, Jim. Frank says, good morning. Happy 162nd anniversary of Balls Bluff.
That's a good one.
We did an episode about that one.
Balls Bluff is a lot of fun. I mean, hopefully, I'm not sure if I know Frank kind of did the tour when he was here. I don't know if you got a chance to go to Balls Bluff, but Balls Bluff is a great battlefield. That's a lot of it's similar to the one of the Bristol Station thing we just did. But Balls Bluff is pristine. You could walk down and see the Potomac. You can see where Edward Baker was allegedly shot, which probably isn't really the right spot. But they got that cool little cemetery that you can see there. It's right there. It's a beautiful place. That's where from Bill got stung by a bee and was crying like a baby.
I remember that.
General
I wasn't there, but you sent me the picture of it.
Yeah, that was fun. But Ballsville is a great battlefield. It's kind of in the middle of a neighborhood. It's set back. You think you go into the wrong place as you're looking at someone's backyard, but then you go on this big long dirt road, and there it is. And it's a cool little place. So there's a lot of great battlefields in Virginia, Maryland, all those places that you can go find. But Balls Bluff that's an easy one. You can kind of make the rounds. You can go to Balls Bluff, you can go to Star Ford, you can go to Winchester, you can go to all those little places, all in that same area. It's pretty cool. Anyways.
No, I was looking at our settings for make sure this isn't private. So hopefully people can access it okay. I was a little bit worried about that.
Oh yeah, it's probably user error on my
phone. So yeah, the guy our friend Bill Hammond, he messaged us and asked where the live stream was. He found it, which is good.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell the deal was. It seems like the settings are a little bit different on this YouTube thing. I don't know. I just go on if that's fine. I do. Yeah,
Balls Bluff. Balls Bluff, like you said, like you really have to it's back in a neighborhood, right? And you have to drive.
Yeah, it's you just drive. You just drive right through there and you go through this little neighborhood. It's got all Confederate general names on the roads, and then you get to this little. It's like going through like a little campsite. You go down this big long dirt road, you park, and it opens up, and this big huge field is right there. You walk in from where the Confederates would have come from. So you're walking towards the Potomac down this field. The cemetery is up on the end, and then you go down the slope we can go down to the Potomac. You can come up where guys like Charles Devins, those guys would have come up. You can
Mhm.
climb right up the Potomac, and they got a little monument there, right where Baker was shot and killed, Lincoln's
Mhm.
friend. Although it's debated that's actually where it was. They think he might have been further back, but they wanted to put him forward to show he was up front.
I don't think they ever know exactly, like, and that's the thing, like, you know, you have like, wasn't it John Belt or Batchelder that got into it with Hancock? MJ would know this better than I do. But that got into it with Hancock over basically saying you were not shot there.
Yeah, that's the problem with man and memory and all that stuff. At the end of the day, it shouldn't matter. I mean, Hancock was upset because he thought that his monument wanted to be closer to the front, because where his Mooney monument is down by the Pennsylvania Memorial, where the big Vermont George Standard Monument is at Gettysburg. But I think he thought it was a little bit a setback away from the front, which it wasn't. But I think who knows? Batchelder knew, but I'd like to think Hancock would probably know better.
Honestly, if I got shot, I would probably remember where I was.
If I got a vanilla nut tap on the battlefield, I remember where I got hit. I'm telling you point blank, I would. But Batchelder.
Remember when you didn't believe me that it was a witness tree and it was the Gibbon witness tree, and I had to show it to you at Adams County Historical Society?
That's true. Yeah, you got me
at the
on
museum. I was like, there's the Gibbon tree, and you're like, that's not a witness tree. Like,
I didn't say that. You said, is that the witness tree?
No, I said that's the witness tree.
And
you questioned me. You questioned my valor.
I questioned your valor, sir. No, you said, is that a witness tree? I said, I don't know, to be honest. I said, no, we looked it up. You said, I think that's the Gibbon tree. There might have been beer involved, which might have been affected the whole thing, but I don't know.
So Frank said he learned a lot about Bristow Station. This is the episode last night. Thank you, Frank. And he said, can anyone recommend a book on Bristow?
There's a couple of emerging Civil War books. Chris Makowski is one of the dudes on Bristow. But the problem is, there are books that you can find. The book I was looking at, somewhere, I can't remember where the hell it was, but the Bristow campaign. That episode we did was really the whole campaign, because the Bristow Station battle is a 30-minute battle. Half the fun with Bristow Station is the lead up to it, because you've got the armies doing this, and you have Lee being masterful in getting in Meade's head, and whether it was by design or not, that of all the battles, and there was some debate on another thing we were talking about this morning about Lee being a great general, all that, and he was. He's not without flaws, but the thing about it though is he had such a cult of personality. It's like playing the Yankees when they were really good, or playing the Patriots when they were really good. Is you psychologically you were beat before the game started, and that was kind of the thing with him. And to answer your question, we have to look that up for you, Frank. But there are definitely books, but there's not a lot, because the whole point of the episode was the Bristow campaign and the Bristow Station battle are very overlooked, because no one studies the fall of 63 in the East.
Frank said it's like Gettysburg, the sequel.
It is. And ironically, it's because the Western theater is overshadowing the East. It's probably the only time that really happens.
I mean, honestly, though, like, I'm going to defend the Western theater on that, because there is shit going down that is really important. I mean, they have to hold Chattanooga. They have to. If they lose Chattanooga, that's a huge thing. Like, I know everybody says Vicksburg is the key, but I think in this case, like, and don't get me wrong, like, Bristow and this whole campaign is really important. And I think it needs to be studied from a standpoint of the generalship of Lee and of Meade, and kind of like, because the one thing, that really, I don't know, that I find interesting is this relationship that the two of them had, that I think Lee knew that Meade was the best one he'd ever faced on the field up to that.
Well, he said McClellan was, though.
Really?
He wrote
that's
that.
Right too, yeah.
So I would have to, not so fast, my friend, Lee Corso, if you know what that means, to that. I think he knew that he got beat by, I think he got beat at Gettysburg, and I think it drew blood. And Lee, once he got back all the way back south of the beyond the Rapidan, I think he knew he wanted to go get him again. But history doesn't tell the story, because there's no real big, gigantic. I mean, Bristow Station is a big battle for the most part. When you look at 40,000 Confederates and 8,300 Union, that sounds like a lot. But by the time most of those Confederates got there, the Union, they were gone.
Yeah, but you have to remember too that memory is factoring into this battle as well. And like, as we've mentioned a few times this morning, memory is a funny thing when it comes to history. And this is not a good day for the Confederates. And I think it's something that they didn't want to talk about. I mean, after the battle, like Lee says to AP Hill, okay, bury your guys, and we're not talking about this anymore. Like he's ready to forget about it because it is so, but it's just not a good look for them. And that could factor into the reason too why it's not really discussed at all.
Well, I think it doesn't get discussed a lot because the fact of Chickamauga is going on almost a couple weeks before. Chattanooga is about to start. You've got the Grant coming to Chattanooga phenomenon. You've got the Rosecrans shit with Lincoln. Don't forget too, that's going to lead ultimately to Longstreet going to Knoxville. All that stuff is, all those machinations are going on in Tennessee, Georgia around that time. And you've got a lot of stuff going on with Meade. Lincoln's still pissed off that he doesn't bag him at Williamsport. And then Lee is, for the most part, still wants to be aggressive. He knows there's no supplies in Northern Virginia, but he wants to do it anyway. He's trying to figure out a plan. And I have to think that once he found out that your boy, the one-armed man, got sent west, and Slocum got sent west, and those 13,100 Union soldiers went out west, I think Lee saw an opportunity here, right? Mm-hmm. But I think he realized because Longstreet was gone, he lost his old warhorse guy.
Yeah.
I think he tried to figure out a game plan. And the funny part about it was, for those who didn't listen to the episode or don't study the Bristow campaign, Culpeper is shaped like a V.
Yeah.
Okay. Where you got the Rapidan and the Rappahannock River intersection, and you got the Blue Mountain Ridge. So it looks like you got to use your mind. It's like a sideways V. If you're in that spot, you're in a very vulnerable spot to have. If you get hit, you have to retreat. You got mountains, you got rivers, you got the Rosewoods Clown. They're all there, right? But Meade moves down there because he knows that if he's going to he wants to launch an offensive against Lee, he has to. That's his staging point. It's like the Peach Orchard, right?
Yeah. It's
a vulnerable spot, but you got to have it if you're going to attack. When Lee finds out he's there and he starts moving his cavalry and moving his infantry to the left to attack him, and then Meade loses where he is and he can't find him, again, you can't see me, right? Mm-hmm. You can imagine what's going through Meade's head. He's sending Buford, he's sending the 5th Corps, the 6th Corps south of the river to go find him, and he can't find him. How do you lose 55,000 men? But Meade did it. Mm-hmm. And then he finds out that he's in his rear.
Yeah.
And then he knows he's in for it and he has to pull everyone together. Then it's a race to Centerville where you got Lee coming around his left and you've got the race of the Union to get back before he gets hit. And that's why Bristow happens, because that's where Lee gets him. Mm-hmm. But AP Hill screws the whole thing up in both.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's why it doesn't get talked about a lot. There's some comments here. Bill mentions that he's like, you're educating me on this Lee thing. He had always, he didn't think that Lee respected McClellan that much.
In Lee's papers, he didn't do memoirs, but he wrote notes. He said McClellan was the best general he went against. Take it for what it's worth. Yeah. Who knows? But that's what he said. And that's, you can only, no reason to believe otherwise. I think he, who knows? That's what he said.
No, I think that's probably true. But I think the other one was probably, Meade is good too. But like Lee is really good. This whole thing of being in of Lee being in Meade's head reminds me of Mosby, who is my background today. There's Mosby right there over my shoulder. There. That Mosby was in the heads of the Union guys, like especially Sheridan, to the point where it was like really bad.
No, and that's the thing too. And we were debating on a chat a little while ago about, like I said, about Lee being a great general. And what made him a great general. Okay, and look, he Gettysburg, pre-Gettysburg is different than post-Gettysburg, and I get Sheep Mountain, West Virginia, he wasn't good, but he was still feeling his spot at that point. But from 7 days up until Gettysburg, he was on a heater. He was that guy at the Vegas table throwing 21. Everything came out Bobby Lee at that point. He had some health issues that kind of fell apart, and the whole dynamic changed. But his success, specifically from 7 days, when he did all that with Stonewall Jackson pissing down his leg, he got into the heads of Washington and the Union. And that's why Grant was told, your goal is not Richmond, it's Lee's head.
Yeah.
Because he knew that he was He was that guy. And then it turned, and Mosby got that reputation. But this campaign, this Bristow Station campaign, shines a light on it. And you don't see it, you don't see a lot of it. You don't see people talking about it because campaigns is usually battles. This is one where Meade was seeing ghosts, and he was scared to death of what Lee did, even without Jackson. He's got the 2 corps, the 2nd under Ewell, 3rd under A.P. Hill, and he's still got the cavalry. But now this cavalry's watered down because Wade Hampton got the hit in the head there at Gettysburg, and Jeb Stuart's running the division. Him and Fitzhugh, they're still in Meade's head to the point where he hears it's like camping in the woods. You hear someone step on a log and you turn around, you freak out that the Roosevelt's clouds behind you, right? That's what it was, though. And so you're great if you have one strike on your batter as a pitcher without even throwing a pitch. And that's what Lee was at that point, even after Gettysburg.
Yeah, he was Miranda, you mean Mosby the terrorist? The thing that Jen Tilly sent us where it was an advertising thing for a Mosby talk, and someone had written something and said Mosby the terrorist.
I mean, look, the thing about Mosby, okay, and we did a whole episode on John Mosby, and look, I like Mosby, I do.
I do too.
I mean, by definition, yeah, of course, he caused terror. He was by definition a terrorist. But this is a guy who, like John Hunt Morgan, when he caught you, he slapped you in the ass and let you go. He wasn't like lying. I mean, that's what he did, though, literally and figuratively. I mean, John Stoughton notwithstanding. But I mean, he'd catch all these guys, and he'd sit there and say, "I just let you know, John Mosby got you," and he'd let them go.
Yep.
And so that's what he wasn't a guy who was burning places and killing all these people. So it's a little overblown, and I get that, but these people were in the heads of a lot. And that's the one takeaway from the Bristow campaign, if you study it and you really get into it, is how much he got into Meade's head. Even after Meade beat him, he was still very scared of what Lee was going to do. Because it was a 2-pronged thing. He knew that he was going to get either attacked or worse, he was going to escape. And if he escaped, he knew he was going to get fired.
Yeah.
So
and I think that was in Meade's head a lot, as much as Lee, was the fact that, his predecessors, mainly Hooker and Burnside, were not long lived in the job. And Meade, and this is really bad of the administration to give him shit over Gettysburg when they are like, and I mean, what grant did it get at Vicksburg was amazing, but it became a campaign of how many times can you fail to take a place? And then when you finally do, the boss loves you, right? Like, meanwhile, Meade is getting shit for Gettysburg from the administration, from Lincoln, from Halleck. So he's scared that he's going to get fired. And it's like, if he gets fired, who the hell is going to command the Army of the Potomac? Odds are it's going to be John Sedgwick. It's going to be Sedgwick.
It probably Sedgwick or Slocum. Probably Sedgwick. Sedgwick was very highly thought of.
Yeah.
And I know people say Hancock, but Hancock was not the guy.
Well, Hancock was wounded, but I also think too that if Hancock had been chosen to command the AOP, that would have pissed. I think that finally would have pissed John Sedgwick off. He would have been like, "Whoa, this guy is like way below my."
But the biggest reason why was because he was injured.
Yeah. And
he wasn't exactly riding the Peloton during his rehab, obviously. But he was someone who was hurt. I mean, he was legitimately hurt.
His injury was really bad.
And you saw the effects of that. I mean, don't forget, people think of Reams Station when you think of Hancock, but he didn't do very good at Spotsylvania.
No.
Right? He didn't. So you want to talk about Lee being different after Gettysburg. Hancock was different after Gettysburg, and he never recovered from it. He just never did. But at the end of the day, that's why you have people. And the other thing that Lee was talking about with this was he knew, although he lost Longstreet, he knew that Howard's 11th, and most of the 11th anyway, and Slocum's 12th was gone.
Yeah.
But he also knew the changes in the AOP. John Newton now is running the 1st, right? You've got Gouverneur K. Warren temporarily running the 2nd. You got William French, who had this issue, wouldn't stop blinking. They called him Blinky. He's in charge. You got George Sykes running the 5th, who sucked.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
How did Sykes get that job?
I don't know, but he's one of the more. He got the job because Meade got the 5th, got the AOP. Right. He got promoted up, and then you've got You got Cedric in the sixth, who was their best one. But you got a lot of inexperienced guys in temporarily positions. The only one who really did himself well was Warren.
Yeah.
And
I
he
agree.
got dipped by Sykes at Bristow. And that's the whole thing. That's what's fascinating about this was Bristow happens on October 14th, 1863.
Yeah.
And Sykes, you know, whether he had sciatica, okay, whether
Sciatica is
it's
very painful.
okay, whether that's
Fucking
true
painful.
or it's the Rodney Dangerfield, oh, my arm, right? He gets replaced later in 64 permanently by Warren. A lot of it had to do with how well he did at this Bristow Station battle. Because he did well. And we know people who don't like Gouverneur K. Warren for whatever reason, but you can't deny what he did at Bristow Station definitely saved his corps, especially when Sykes, except for William McCandless's division, he's the only one, they took off and left him hanging, holding his diaper in the rain. See you later, Governor. You know, at least you got your statue on Round Top that nobody can visit anymore.
Yeah, Bill
But at least you
Hammond
got that.
said the miserable Phil Sheridan got to Warren. I agree, he did. And I mean, yeah, Warren doesn't have Warren has bad days in the Civil War, but you know who has more bad days? Sheridan.
No, Sheridan has a couple of good moments. We've said this before.
He's like a lottery ticket.
No, he's that psycho girlfriend who you want to dump, and every so often she does something good for you, and you keep her around. Like that's what she is, right?
Yeah.
What he is. But you can't deny he had his good moments. They all have their good moments. But speaking to Bristow, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk in that episode about lead up to it, you know, what was the Battle of Auburn. His second corps fought two battles in the same day in two different spots. And not a lot of guys can say that. All because of Jeb Stuart getting lost, getting stuck in between the two advancing armies. Ewell's going to come in and fight. He's going to fight him and then take off. And then he runs into Ewell again later, Richard Anderson's division, and A.P. Hill at Bristow Station. So he earns his chops with this. And because he's an engineer, he's able to place Alexander Webb, Alexander Hayes divisions in a perfect spot right behind that railroad tracks, and set up all Ricketts Battery, all those 16 guns on the high ground before the train track. So at the end of the day, the Confederates have 40,000 guys against 8,300 Union guys, and Warren's able to get the hell out of there and save his skin and hold them off. You know, poor Cook and Kirkland, those North Carolina guys, they got their asses handed to them.
Yeah.
All because of A.P. Hill.
And some of those North Carolina guys too, like you have Pettigrew's guys there. I think it's the 26th, right? They were absolutely decimated after Gettysburg.
Well, Pettigrew was long gone by then. I mean,
no, I know, but I'm saying they had been with Pettigrew, and they had obviously Pettigrew's killed in the retreat from Gettysburg, but these guys were decimated at Gettysburg, and then they're fighting here.
Yeah, this is Henry King Burgoyne's guys who got smoked by the Michigan men over there in the 24th Michigan over there in the woods at Gettysburg on the first day. But I mean, you're going up there with the 11th, the 26th, the 47th, the 52nd North Carolina, okay, and you're going with Cook, 1827th, 46th, and 47th North Carolina, 4,000 men, two big freaking brigades. And you think you're chasing Sykes up the railroad track, and you get to the track, and all of a sudden, all these guys rise up from behind and start firing at you. Mm-hmm. That's a bad day for Mother.
Very bad.
Very bad. Very, very bad. Bad man, Jenny. Bad man.
Real quick, and this is off topic. What is the name? Because my brain is like mush right now from all the assignments I've been doing. Yeah.
Well, Merry Saturday morning.
Grad school is a thing. So what is the name of the Native American who Howard is with out west, who he has that thing?
Oh God.
I can't remember. Kevin's talking about how he's learning more about the Indian Wars, and I'm trying to remember what his name was because there's a really good book.
Oh, it's Chief Joseph.
Yes, Chief Joseph. Thank you.
I don't know how you talk about that for a second.
I'm just recommending, there's a book about Howard, Chief Joseph, and the Indian Wars, which is really good.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, I think, hey, it's okay. It's okay. But I think, you know, when you study this, I think it's fascinating. And a lot of people, if you do visit Bristow Station, if you go to Manassas, it's like 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
You just follow the strip malls. It takes you right to it. Welcome to Northern Virginia, right? And you get there, and it's called like the Bristow Station Heritage Trust, or the word heritage is in there. And they got a little visitor center. And if you go visit it, you can see the hill where they launched their attack from. The hill that AP Hill stood on and saw the 5th across Broad Run is no longer there. It's like a supermarket or one of those stores now, a dollar store, I think it might be. But the area is pretty pristine, and it's small, but you can really see that field leading up to the train tracks. You can walk right down to the train tracks. The back when it was the Civil War Preservation Trust. This is way back when the earth was core.
Yeah. I remember those days. They were like Civil War Trust, and they were like
right.
American
But this
Rev
is before,
Trust.
This is before CW. This is CWPT. That's when they bought this land. And if you look at if you go to talk to some of the people, there's some good ranger guys who work there. I don't think they're rangers, I think they're just volunteers, but they'll talk about how the developers made a deal to keep the battlefields. And the town basically allowed them to change the zoning laws to build the houses closer together. So the developer built the neighborhood, but the houses had no backyards, but they kept the fields. So I would highly suggest going. I mean, it's a great battle. And Bristow Station, look, I get it. No one studies Bristow Station, but it's important. It really,
yes,
really is.
as all these battles are important, that, you have to start, like, these little ones factor into the bigger ones, and they, sometimes these little ones it's kind of like ripples in a pond, like they have these huge effects on what happens at the bigger ones as well. And same with the personalities that are involved in these, like you have someone like AP Hill, who I think he feels bad that he's not at Gettysburg. AP Hill had a lot of health problems, and I do see him, as I said this in the episode, he's kind of this tragic figure. And as much as I like to make fun of him, it's also really, like, I mean, he had legitimate health problems, whether or not they were from visiting the Bang Barn one too many times. I mean, that was a rumor started by McClellan's mother-in-law. But I think he was kind of like, oh shit, I can try and get my redemption. And I think he's kind of lost in that whole, like, well, I'm not going to send out cavalry to scout or whatever. And Jeb Stuart is like off doing whatever Jeb Stuart does at that time. But you have Gordon is like, doesn't he see the wagon trains? And he's like, whoa. Yeah.
Well, the battle itself is a mess, because when AP Hill gets there and he sees the 5th Corps, and this is the thing, if you study the Bristow Station, you see all the tactical errors in that Hill doesn't realize the Battle of Auburn happened. Doesn't know what happened. No. So he sees the 5th Corps. He's under the impression that George Sykes' 5th is the caboose. It's the last, it's the end of the line. So he sees they're going to start moving up the train tracks, and he's going to hit them. He's going to roll them up like a blanket. He's going to push them right up to that. That's what he sees. Lee wanted very much to bloody Meade's nose. He knew he couldn't destroy the whole army, but he wanted to take a shot at them, and this was his opportunity. But when Hill gets in trouble is because he doesn't realize that once he starts attacking, that the 2nd Corps is actually the caboose, and they're going to come behind him, and they're going to end up crushing them. Now, if the 5th Corps, except for McCandless, if they had turned around, Romaine Ayers, all these guys had stayed and fought, they could have destroyed Hill and Ewell. They could have, or at least really messed them up. But they took off. They were heading back to Centerville. But you're right. When Ewell's guys do show up, and this is, we talk a lot about John Brown Gordon, right? About how it does a lot of good things. This is one that. This and Fort Stedman are probably the 2 black eyes he has.
Like a squirrel here. He's got
the attack is Ewell's like, okay, we're gonna have you. Jubal Early's going to attack, and you're gonna be his support, and we need you to support. This is important. And they're like, all right. Well, there are 1,200 reserve wagons that come rolling down the train track. This is the Union reserve supply. There are no supplies in Virginia anymore. The ground is ripped up. All the DQs are sold out. There's nothing to get, right?
Next year.
Right, exactly. No, Hancock gets back. There you go, right? But what happens is Gordon sees the wagons and goes and chases after them.
Well, that's why I said he's like a squirrel. He's got this ADD.
He does.
He's like squirrel.
So you have Jeb Stuart going with sharpshooters, going down the wrong side of the railroad track. You've got Gordon following the reserve trains. And now Early's like, come on, I have no support. I can't fight. So he never really attacks all that well. And then the next morning, then Lee, darkness falls. He's like, well, and you can only imagine him face palming.
Yeah.
He's like, look, tomorrow morning, we're going to go get these guys. We got 40,000 men. We're all here. It's good. We're going to fight. The next morning, he sends down Kirkland and Cook again. And for whatever reason, he sends those same North Carolinians down, who just got their asses handed to them the day before. They come charging over the embankments. They get their guns ready to go, and nobody's there.
Yep.
Warren had left that night and took off.
So he kind of does what's his face? He doesn't sneak away, but I'm going to say it's kind of like at Spring Hill.
It's kind of like Scoville at Spring Hill a little bit.
Yeah.
But the thing about it, though, is Warren didn't leave because, I think he realized that he was going to be in for a fight the next morning. He left because Meade gave specific orders to stay in contact with the Fifth Corps and not let that gap get too wide.
Yeah.
And Sykes must have been watching the O.O. Howard training video because he was flying. So Warren had to keep up with him, and he left, and that ended up being a huge missed opportunity for Lee. And he ends up falling back. But to give Meade credit, though, Meade goes back to Centerville, but he sends troops back again to try to fight Meade again. And that's where the Battle of Kelly's Ford and Rappahannock Station takes place November 7th, and finally drives Lee over back into Orange County. He was the first general to actually do that. So I don't know if he had Lee's head a little bit, but he certainly, Meade definitely rebounded because he's under this pressure from Washington to fight, to attack.
Well, I think he's also doing that because he doesn't want to get replaced. Like he doesn't, because and obviously it's going to be Sedgwick that replaces him. But
probably.
But even then, our friends over at Battle of Gettysburg podcast, they did a really good episode with Carol Reardon about Sedgwick. And she talks about how humble he was, and one of the questions that they asked her was, was Sedgwick upset when he was passed over? Because he's the highest ranking officer at one point. And she was like, no, I don't think he was. He was just whatever. And I think Slocum was the same way. There was a post I read recently it was in MJ's group, which MJ's on here. So good morning to MJ. Her group, Gettysburg, These Honored Dead, which is a really great group. They did, I think it was on Wednesday, they did favorite Gettysburg participants. So of course, you posted, you had Tilden, you had David Ireland, and who else did you have on there?
Howard,
Longstreet.
Gordon, Longstreet. I
had Gordon, Howard, Schurz. I had someone respond to me say that one of their great grandfather was with Schurz. But our friend LC, who he's very much into First Corps, but he likes the 12th Corps, he posted Slocum, and he said that Slocum was a very humble guy. And Slocum didn't get upset when he was when he became commander. He was whatever. Yeah. And Sedgwick was the same way. There was guys that didn't care about the rank. Because honestly, if you're Slocum or Sedgwick, you're probably shit, am I going to be next for this freaking job? And you've seen Hooker and Burnside.
Well, don't forget they were being appointed at that point. So that it doesn't really matter, going back to the wrestling again, Link would say, do you want to take control? He goes, it doesn't matter if you want to take control. You're going to do it, right?
Yeah. Oh, he was ordered because Reynolds turned it down, and
they were done. No, but the thing about it though is when you look at the Bristow campaign, okay, which is kind of like the post. It's a big volcano blows up. That's Gettysburg. Those post tremors. That's what Bristow is.
Yeah.
But when you look at Bristow campaign, and you talk about the fact that 11th Corps and 12th Corps for the most part are gone. Okay, that's 13. That's a lot of men, right? But you get 9,700 back from the New York draft riot suppression in New York. So you end up down about 4,000 guys. You look at 88,000 guys at this point. Confederates have 55 because they lost Longstreet. They're up to 72, and then Jefferson Davis says Longstreet's gone.
I think Longstreet needed a timeout.
Well, I think they both need a little bit. They needed some couples counseling a little bit. They needed to split. But the thing about it, though, is you want to play the what-if game. If Longstreet stays, and the only reason, the funny thing is that the real reason why Lee attacked Meade at the Bristow campaign, which led to all those battles that culminated in Bristow Station, was because the numbers were close. You're talking 88,055. Still sucks, but it's as close as you had in a while. If you had Longstreet, it's going to be pretty close. And you wonder how the tide might have turned if he had those three divisions and all those guys from the first division.
Mhm.
Because say what you will about the issues with Longstreet, you had John Bell Hood, right?
Well,
You know,
John Bell Hood was still out at this point.
right, but you had his men, you had those Texans, you had people who were hard fighting guys, and Lee knew too. Look at the people fighting against now. You have a lessened number because you lost the 11th and 12th Corps. You're either with John Newton, Gouverneur K. Warren, William French. Those are three new guys. They're shining out of the package for the most part.
But Warren's pretty good.
No, and like he's good. Like we said before, you got George Sykes, who sucks. He does. But you have Sedgwick, who's probably the best of the bunch. And Sykes proves he sucks here again. It's why he gets his ass literally sent on a rail when Gouverneur K. Warren takes over, when Hancock does come back in 64 to take on the second.
I would have loved to have been there when Warren went to talk to Sykes.
Well, that's the best part about it.
Thing.
And I tried to find some stuff, and the only thing I could find was after the Battle of Bristol Station. Now, understand, you're Warren. You know that you found yourself fighting, for the most part, half, if not all, of Lee's army in one time, or you're about to. 40,000 guys you're going to bump into. It's at some point up when you have 8,000 guys of yourself. Me's telling you that you want your corps to stay close enough to support each other. And that's why he had to race up after the battle to get to Bristol Station. To see Sykes turn and take off and leave you by yourself. So after that battle, Warren does find Sykes, and they lose their freaking mind each other. And Warren is a hard mouthy prick. He just is. Even he felt that lashing must have been so bad, because Warren commented that he apologized afterwards. So it makes you wonder how bad that was. And there's that great quote: the Second Corps soldiers hated the Fifth Corps soldiers because they knew that that the Fifth Corps could not leave until the Second Corps arrived at Bristow. They wanted to be close. The Fifth Corps takes off and leaves them, doesn't wait for them. And the Second Corps soldier says, he says, I'm paraphrasing now, that yes, Sykes knew the Second Corps was coming, and the Second Corps was coming. And then he says, as was Christmas. That was a quote he said. So basically, like, Sykes sees the first ray of sunshine, and he thinks it's noontime, and that's what happens. He's supposed to wait for the Second Corps to arrive. He sees the Second Corps, the first scouting party. Warren's still 2 miles behind. And so by the time he goes, it creates that gap. He's too far to support, or he doesn't want to support, except for William McCandless. He's the only guys like Hardin and Talley and those his brigades. They're going to fight and they're going to stay, but the rest of them, see ya.
Yeah.
And that's going to be an issue. That's going to be an issue for everybody.
Bill just said that description of Warren will stay with me.
But that's what he was, though.
Warren is like,
he was friggin' Captain Caveman.
He was so
GK not happy.
Yeah.
But that's
my God.
Was.
And he was also like, what did we say about him? We did that episode where we were talking about like the party. It was alcohol in the Civil War, and I had Gouverneur K. Warren as my guy. Gouverneur K. Warren was the Nikki Sixx of the Civil War.
Yeah.
Like he got the man got around before the Civil War. He was down in New Orleans, and Humphreys was his kind of wingman. Gouverneur K. Warren got around with the ladies. Like that's why he's like Nikki Sixx of the Civil War. There's some good comments here. The one I wanted to read was so Kevin said he had a guest who she's descended from Edwin Booth, and she confirmed that. And she said the descendants don't talk about the assassination or JWB to this day. And then he also had on his last tour 5 times great grand uncle their uncle or great grand uncle 5 times was Isaac Trimble.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
We've seen all their graves, as a matter of fact. They're all buried in Baltimore. So
yeah, Trimble was one of I had him as one of my favorite Gettysburg participants. He's on there because I've been to, like, he was held at a few different so after Gettysburg, I think he's in the hospital at the seminary. And anyway, he ends up getting taken to prison. He's at Fort Warren in Boston for a while, and then he's like sent to Johnson's Island, which is like hell on earth in Lake Erie. So I've been to both sites now, and that's kind of why, so I've done the whole kind of the Isaac Trimble tour with where he was imprisoned, where he was buried, all that. Frank said that the new term for angry outburst should be "I got trimbled."
Yeah, well, I mean that's Trimble. Yeah, that might be a little more movie than reality, though. That whole
Yeah,
thing. But
that was a great scene though, where like, I threw down my sword.
Give me one, Reginald. I'll take that here. You know, who knows? But I mean, Trimble definitely he was kind of an observer a little bit. But he had his issue. He had his issues with Ewell. There's no question they did. But I mean, don't forget to me. Gettysburg again. Ewell's that tough spot at Gettysburg, and people forget that. You know, yes, Ewell he fought at Second Winchester, and that was his big moment. He did a good job. He pushed Milroy back. He did a great job. He was not used to vague booking orders from Lee.
That's exactly what it was.
He's used to Stonewall Jackson with very specific orders. You will get up, you will piss, you will have breakfast, you will check the newspaper, you will take out the trash, you will come back, you will shower, you will go to work, you will work, you will come home, you'll eat, you'll go to bed.
I gotta say, that's one thing I really like about Stonewall is he's very specific. And like, you know, in my working life, I like my supervisors to be very specific. Otherwise, I have a tendency to ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Like and I've had people that are more like Lee as supervisors, they're very vague. And I've had ones that are more like Ewell or Stonewall that are very much, this is what you need to do and the order you need to do it in. Yeah. That's what I like.
But you need to be a very specific type of employee to have a boss like that. And Lee was a macro manager, and I think it took some time for Ewell to get used to that. And he gets that famous order, the Campbell Brown story, you know, go to the Cashtown, Gettysburg area, and he has that quote, "Do we have anybody in the staff who can write an intelligible order?" But this is a lot of stuff in flux in real time. But you know, I don't know where I was going with this, by the way. But for the most part, Ewell, you know, he's going to get into trouble there with Trimble, but that's kind of how it goes, though. But that's how it is. But the unions deal with the same thing too. I mentioned a little while ago about the parade of new faces in the AOP, and you saw again with the Army of the Cumberland, you saw in the Confederate Army of Tennessee. You had the big trade deadline. If you want to a sports mentality, is the summer of '63, because everybody gets passed around like a comb on first grade picture day, right? And they find themselves in these new homes, new places with new managers. How do you think Longstreet dealt with Bragg after being with Lee?
Yep.
You're Longstreet and you get very laissez-faire orders from Lee because you're trusted. Now you got Bragg telling you what to do, when to do. Fuck off. Seriously?
Well, I think Longstreet went out there under the impression that he could possibly take over that army, because obviously the rumors are going to get back. Well, I mean, he's going to find out though about what the hell's going on, that they don't have a lot of confidence in Bragg. Interesting thing, I just remembered about Howard going out to the Western Theater is, so in his memoirs, Howard's talking about this time post Gettysburg, and he's like, I didn't know what I was doing. There was a possibility that Howard was going to be put in command of the Second Corps.
I've talked about that. We talked about that many
said
times.
That, like, and the only reason he didn't was because they didn't know when Hancock was going to come back, but they were going to put Howard in charge of the Second Corps. So the reason Warren gets it, I think, is because Howard is being shipped out west.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is you see how the changes go. But I mean, give Warren credit, though. He did well.
He did really well. I don't know if Howard would have done as well as Warren.
Who knows? But I mean, Warren, he's an engineer by trade. He's a rising star in the Union Army as an engineer.
He's the unsung hero of Little Round Top in my eyes.
No, he is. Him and Strong Vince are the two who really get credit for it. They who really should get credit for it. But he did. I mean, there aren't too many people who can say they fought two battles in the same day in two locations. Now, the first one, admittedly, he swung a few pillows and ran away, and he did, admittedly. But Bristow, he manned up in Bristow. He did. If you go to Bristol Station, you can walk right across that field, right where those Carolinians had crossed. There's 4,000 guys under Cook and Kirkland, and you can see that train track. The train track is taller now, because it was lower back in 1863, but it was a perfect natural embankment, and it's tough when you don't know there's guys there. But when there's 8,000 guys behind the tracks, that's a shitty day. Bad day for Mother. But again, how I realized Hood was, Hood was injured, but if he would have been there, in all his Texans. Speaking of Texans, do you see what the freaking Texas Rangers did last night, by the way?
Yeah,
Speaking of baseball.
Ben is on here from Texas, and he just said he's still hurting over it. And I said, our
I
condolences.
used to live in Arlington, Texas. Oh, I know so bad. Hey, Ben, what's going on? I used to live in Arlington, Texas, in Italy, and I used to go to all the Ranger games. It was the old ballpark, 4 or 5 ballparks to go now Arlington Stadium before the ballpark at Arlington and this Globe Life thing. And the big joke was they would never win. And they had that really shitty World Series last couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And they had the Astros, you know, by the junk, and they let them off the hook. And it's typical Rangers, God's sakes. But anyway, but where I was trying to go with this was you had a lot of missed opportunity on both sides. And I bet you Lee was definitely missing that first core at that point.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt he was worried, but Meade is kind of being put in the same position, but he's getting those troops back from New York, but he's also losing troops as well. And this whole shuffling thing doesn't get talked about a lot. All of a sudden, the 12th and 11th Corps just they appear in the Western Theater, and so does Longstreet, right? And I wonder if Longstreet, knew, like, when they found out that the 11th and 12th Corps was going to be shuffled down there.
Well, here's my opinion. Okay, I don't think the 11th and 12th Corps gets shipped out if Longstreet's still there.
Nope.
Because the only reason that Lincoln and Halleck, not so much Stanton in this case, it was mostly Halleck, to be honest. Why they shipped the 11th and 12th of those 13,100 men west was because they knew Longstreet was gone, and they weren't convinced Meade was going to attack. But they also gave him mixed orders: attack, don't attack. It was changed by the day. And Lincoln and Halleck felt that army was way too big to sit around idly playing defense when they could use the troops elsewhere. But if Longstreet stays, Bristow Station, or wherever the hell would have happened, could have been Gettysburg 2.0 as far as battle size.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about that, and I'll have to go back and look at the exact dates in Howard's memoirs, is that, there's a certain point where Howard is like, oh, I'm going to be, leading the Second Corps because Hancock's gone. All of a sudden he gets called to Washington, and he has a meeting with President Lincoln. We talked about this in our episode about Howard, that Lincoln tells him, we're sending you guys out west because that's where we need you to go. And that meeting, interestingly enough, is where Lincoln tells Howard, you need to do something for the people in this area, like in Appalachia, at some point when the war is over, because they've been loyal to us. And he's referring specifically to the people in the Knoxville area, that they've been loyal to us. But Howard goes there and he's caught off guard by, like, okay, well, I was going to be in charge of the Second Corps, and guess I'm going out west now with Slocum. Slocum doesn't get asked to come to the meeting, which is interesting because Slocum outranks Howard, and so does Hooker. But it's Howard that gets called, and he is the one that gets the orders. And he said, like, within a few days, they're heading to the west.
Slocum was not the most motivated guy as far as promoting himself, too.
No, he was not vocal. Like, Slocum's very humble. He's very good at what he does, and he's very
he did his job. But unlike the Rosecranses, the Grants, those people, I think he was more focused on just not worrying about what his next job was going to be. He was just focused on his current job. So he did it well. And he has great hair, by the way. He has Pete Carmichael hair.
He does. Slocum's got very good hair.
He does. Hella good hair, as Taylor Swift would say.
Okay. So they go out west, and that's like, you think about it, had that not happened, it might have been Howard fighting at Bristow and not Warren.
Yeah, it's tough to say because how history might have changed. He would have had to fight at the Battle of Auburn, which he probably would have. That's the Battle of Auburn happens because Jeb Stuart gets himself lost again. He sees those 1,200 wagons, and he says, I want to go get them. He finds himself literally hiding in the woods with 2 Union armies going parallel to him, like this, southwest and northeast. He's stuck in the middle, and he has to fight his way out of it. And John Caldwell, gets sent over, and he's sitting there, he's boiling coffee on the hill, and Jeb opens up his artillery, gives away his position, fires on him. The hill will be known as back. The hill will be known as Coffee Hill because they were boiling coffee at the time of the attack, and still today known as Coffee Hill. and it ends up being causing the Battle of Auburn. And why that's important is because it forced Warren to veer off his track as he's following Blinky French along the left-hand side. Now he's got to go east and he's got to connect with the railroad, the Orange and the Alexandria Railroad, which is why Bristow Station happens, is because Jeb gets stuck and he gets lost. And you can imagine Lee, once again, for the second time in a few months, he doesn't know where Stewart is. And he what the hell again? But then he gets a message that goes, hey, I'm stuck here. I got all these Union dudes here. So he has to send Ewell's Second Corps in to fight, leads the Battle of Coffee Hill, forces Warren to go east, get along the railroad, go north, where he gets popped by A.P. Hill, creates the Battle of Bristow Station. And then Ewell shows up again, but it's too little too late. And then, of course, Gordon chases after the friggin' wagons. The whole thing blows up.
Gordon sees a squirrel.
But it's all because of, the Battle of Bristow Station happens directly because Jeb gets stuck.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Warren's staying on that left track. The rest of the army is on the right track. And chances are Lee is going to have to hit the Third Corps with French and the Second Corps under Warren somewhere, probably just northwest of Auburn. And Bristol never happens. But the Battle of Bristol happens. Station happens because of Ewell. Because of Stewart. And that's what's cool about history. The little thing, how the butterfly effect, how it changes things.
Yeah.
And because of that battle and because of how it all falls apart, it falls Lee to fall back again, which leads the Battle of Kelly's Ford and Rappahannock Station. It ends up driving him back across the Rapidan back to Orange County. And it's all because of these 1,200 wagons.
Yeah.
I think that stuff's cool. I always did.
I do too. I think it's like these little, like I said, had Howard not gone out to the west, he might have been the one in charge of the Second Corps. It's interesting how it just kind of changes on a dime. So interesting thing about Jeb Stuart, I think I was telling you about this review I read for the Killer Angels. It was one, I think, that came out after, so it was in 75, after he won the Pulitzer Prize. Someone said that they were trying to figure out who the villain was in the Killer Angels for some reason. And they said it was Jeb Stuart.
Well, we were reading the reviews. We were reading the reviews, and clearly, whoever read this is the book, not the movie. Whoever was doing the reviews didn't read the book.
Oh, for Kirkus Reviews, whoever did the review in 74 for Kirkus Reviews read up to the point where Trimble does not take, or where Trimble comes and yells at Lee and he didn't take the hill, right? So the review basically was that Lee lost the battle because he decided to go after that hill. And that hill is Cemetery Hill, the one that Ewell doesn't take. So they didn't even read about Pickett's charge. It was the review was just, I read it a couple times until I'm like, this person didn't read the book at all. They said the battle was fought completely over Cemetery Hill.
Well, that's not totally wrong, though.
It's not, but you could tell because they reference they say that hill.
But just the way that the review was written, it was clear that it was what the hell. But the Battle of Gettysburg was the 3 days was focused on Cemetery. It was, but you know what I mean. By reading that review, it was wait a second, they didn't read this.
I'm like, whoa. Any other review talks about Pickett's charge, but then I read another review, I think it was from the New York Times, written in after May of 75, after the Pulitzer Prize. And the person said, if there's any villain in this, it's Jeb Stuart. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, well, that's all, again, that goes back to the whole thing we've been saying before about the blatant mistreatment of Jeb Stuart at the Battle of Gettysburg because of things because of John Marshall and Walter Taylor. And then it gets Michael Schara builds on that. And of course, the movie builds on it.
The primary sources at the time.
Yeah.
That's what he's writing.
We see if we had gone to Gettysburg last weekend, I would sit there. I'd be like that scene, Good Will Hunting, with Robin Williams and Matt Damon. I'd be like, Jeb, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Because it wasn't his fault.
No, it absolutely. And Mosby was the one that was saying that this is not Jeb's fault at all. But the thing about studying the Killer Angels is I have more of an appreciation for it now that I've read, and they're letters all from the publishing company to Michael Schara, but some of them are from Schara to the publishing company. And he's very passionate about it. Like there's a 2-page letter he wrote about the maps in the book.
Yeah.
That when he got one of the proofs back, he was like, basically, this is shit. You know what? If you want me to, I'll come and draw these maps myself. Because he said that the whole point of the book, one of the main things of the book that he wanted to convey to the reader was the high ground, was what they were fighting over. And he said the maps weren't good enough, that couldn't be conveyed to the reader. And good for him for being adamant about that. The maps in the book are really, really good. And that's because Shara was so adamant about it. But, the other thing too is I found a quote with him. He didn't care who his audience was. Shara is writing for himself. He's writing because he's so taken by what he sees on this ground. And the reason I have more of an appreciation for it is because one of his heroes was Chamberlain. And so as much as Chamberlain now maybe has
Joshua Chamberlain?
Yes. As much as Joshua maybe has too big of a thing now with Gettysburg, with the Round Tops, Shara was writing about him as his hero.
He visited Gettysburg, and he, like many of us, he fell in love with it. It got into his blood. It called to him, but he liked certain aspects of it. But the movie Gettysburg is nothing more than a bromance set in a battle. That's all it is. And so if you're going to write that, you have to have compelling characters. So you embellish the Armistead Hancock thing. You talk about the fact that, look, he loves himself some Joshua Chamberlain. And look, nothing against Chamberlain, but he made Little Round Top to be the movie, in the book anyway, the primary events on the second day of July. And it happened, and there's no minimizing it. But I think if you read the book and you see the movie, you think that's the only thing that happens. And that was the hill that he saved to save the Union. Even Ken Burns, he says that a professor from Maine, saved the Union, left flank and maybe save the Union.
And that's because Ken Burns read The Killer Angels and read about Chamberlain. But the thing is the reason that, I've come to kind of appreciate what Shara is doing more is Chamberlain was his hero. And he's right. And like any of us would do that. Right in that way, and that's what he's doing. And also Shara, his great grandfather was with the 4th Georgia,
George Dole's guys,
fighting
over by the McLean farm. They were fighting, ironically, the 11th Corps, right? The Nike Brigade. But the thing about it, though, in all seriousness, he wrote the book. It'd be like if you visited Gettysburg today and you like Howard and you wrote the book and you focused on the 11th Corps and you focus on the people you liked, right? And that's what happens. It was never designed to be a history lesson. It was designed to talk about this human interest story in the midst of war, that friendships can overcome war. And that's what the whole story was kind of about.
And that's it. And the other thing he took shit for was his editor made a comment about Lee's health. And Shara himself had suffered a heart attack at the age of 36. He knew the symptoms of what it was. And he was reading Lee's letters, reading about Lee. And he was like, did this guy maybe have a heart attack? Had heart problems leading up to this. Shara actually went to a cardiologist and said, these are this guy's symptoms. And the cardiologist said, I think he might have had a heart attack.
Well, a lot of historians since then have dovetailed on that thing. He probably had some kind of heart issue. Because it definitely, Lee is a different guy. There's no question he is. But that's the thing about the book, though, is there are little things about the book that just make it I understand why he wrote in what he did, but also there are little things he kind of made up things that he didn't have to.
Yes.
Right. Now, again, he's trying to build the Armistead Hancock story. Right, so he's going to lift them up, right? So is Hancock. So he makes Hancock the primary guy at the cemetery gatehouse meeting instead of Howard. Right, and you like you said, you can talk about the fact he over embellished Little Round Top, but at least that friggin' happens, right? The Hancock thing, it's just fiction.
The story of the cemetery, the story of when Meade gets there is It is very much, it's not how it happened. Hancock is not even on the field
Right.
when
So,
Meade
but
arrives
but
there. Slocum
he's
is.
doing that because he's building those, and not that against Hancock, but
No.
he's creating the characters, the symmetry
Yeah.
of the two primary characters, which in this case is Hancock and Armistead. But the things he does to push them, he probably didn't have to, but he did, and that's just the way it is.
It's
But
his story, and I've come to, I don't like how he treats Howard, admittedly, but that's because Howard's my favorite general. I don't like the fact that Howard's portrayed as, he's portrayed as an asshole in this novel, and I don't like that. But at the same time, I do remember that Shar is trying to tell a story. Armistead clearly is a guy he admired. So is Hancock. So is Chamberlain. So is Lee. So is Longstreet. He's telling a story, and it's a very good story. But scholarship at the time was not that favorable of Howard, and it I'm not going to say I forgive him for that, but it's just one of those things that it's like this is him telling the story, and
well, he has to tell a story the way he wants to tell it.
Exactly.
And again, he's not. The book was never designed to read the book and then go be a ranger or go be a battle guy. That's and unfortunately, as well as I do, there are a lot of people who take that book literally as gospel.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been at Round Top many times, and they want to know where Buster was injured. Seriously, and we laugh about it on the groups like this, but I mean, but that's because why wouldn't Buster be a fake character?
He's the
because
only
everybody else is
fictional
real.
character in that, and I mean that's one of the things with historical fiction is often you do have one fictional character.
Well, but
it's drive the story along.
It's because he has such a specific injury that you assume that he must be real.
Yeah,
but shot twice in the bloody armpit.
Yeah. Who knows where that came from in Shara's mind?
Well, I mean, I have to think it was done because it was considered a minor injury. So when he died, it shocked you.
It's a big thing.
Right. But he could have been, who the hell knows? But I mean, the thing about it though is he used that character as a metaphor for the thousands of Irish and Germans who were there. So his character by name was not there, but there were thousands of Busters at Gettysburg. There's no question. But I think people, and this is why I kind of, in a way, regret not going last weekend, because it would have been some fun conversations of people watching with this.
I wish I could have went, just because I have this big project that I'm doing about it right now. And I could have asked, question, and I did ask on MJ's group, Gettysburg Dishonored Dead, and people were really good about replying back to me about how Killer Angels has impacted them, and was all positive. I got into the Park Service because of this. I pursued the Civil War more because of this. So, MJ wrote me a really great message about the impact it had on her, and many people did, and I really appreciate that, because the thing, that I'm talking about is the publishing story. Why did Shara talk about this? And it's clearly, he was almost compelled to. Not only does he have an ancestor fighting there, but one of his heroes is Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain. Of course, he's going to embellish or talk about the story of Little Round Top. But the interesting thing about Armistead is he and Jeff, his son, went to Gettysburg in, I think it was 1971 or 1970, to do some more research. And they walked across Pickett's Charge. And this is from Jeff's point of view. He's talking about how they're walking across it. And Jeff said, my father in that moment was Armistead. So clearly, leading up to that trip, Michael Shara had been researching about Armistead, reading stuff about him. And now he's walking in his footsteps. And he's walking to where Armistead gets wounded. And Jeff Shara said his father got very, very choked up as he looked back towards the Lee statue. That, this is a guy he's writing about. He gets wounded here and he's walking in his footsteps. So this is a very personal thing for him. So I respect the liberties he took with the story. I respect what he did with the Round Top, all of that, because it's clearly a very personal thing for him.
And the thing about it though is when you talk about Culp's Hill, you talk about Colville's First Minnesota, you talk about Charles Ward, Massachusetts guys. It's not to diminish Chamberlain, but I think the problem with the movie in the book, especially the movie, was it like I said before, it definitely paints a picture that that was the seminal big event. That was the
Yeah.
only thing that happened. And that's no, I mean, I don't think it was done maliciously by Shara to make it
No.
embellish Chamberlain. But the thing about it though, he has to pick a character who lives, right?
Yes.
So he's not going to
And who
focus on
writes
strong bits,
about it and
right?
writes about it well, and that is
You know,
Joshua Lawrence
right.
Chamberlain.
And Chamberlain passing the armies, he writes well about himself. And but it's not what Chamberlain did, the 20th Maine, fighting Oates' 15th Alabama, right? In Bulger's 47th Alabama, it's not just a 15th. It's a must-have. You have to have that because if the Confederates get there and they get around the backside of Round Top, that becomes, the 83rd Pennsylvania is going to fall apart, 60th Michigan is going to fall apart. It makes that spot unsustainable. They will take that area. They probably won't hold it, but it would have been a bad loss. So it is important. So it's not like saying that it's the stupidest thing. It's no big deal. But I think when you go there, and you've been this, you've seen this too, is how many people have you been around Top and people think the Warren statue is Chamberlain?
Oh, I went there with a friend of mine.
Million times.
Yeah. And he was like, oh my God, it's Chamberlain. I'm like, it's Gouverneur K. Warren. And they had no idea. Now, admittedly, we had watched the movie Gettysburg beforehand. And so he was all, they were like, oh yeah, it's Chamberlain kind of thing. Right. And
what's funny was and this is Chamberlain's a fascinating guy because he was cocky, he was arrogant, he made his wife call him governor. Okay, but he was also not a governor. You would call him governor.
No,
morning governor. But he was also kind of humble in a way too. Was if you go to Little Round Top when it's open, okay, and I guess next spring it's going to open. Yeah. There's a road, a paved road that swings behind Little Round Top, and you can walk down that road. If you get towards the end, there's a boulder that's sitting there right on the side of the road. That's where the Chamberlain statue was supposed to go. They were actually going to build a statue of Chamberlain. This is back when he was still alive. He died around 1914, right around there. Mm. So this is probably 1912, right in that area. Probably around the same time the Yankees lost won the World Series. But what happened was they went to Chamberlain and they said, do you want a statue? And he said, no, I don't want a statue of Gettysburg. But he wanted this picture on a beer bottle, which Shipyard Beer finally did. But what's fascinating too, though, was if you go to his hometown of Brunswick, there is a fake little Round Top, and they have a Chamberlain statue where the Warren statue is. So after he died, the Chamberlain phenomenon really took off. And a friend of mine, admittedly, she had some community service. She had to help build that park, which came after the movie. So the Chamberlain aspect really took off after Kill the Angels, especially after the movie. But he never really wanted this. He never did.
He didn't. And it's interesting. So MJ mentions, I've come to find when we research, write about certain individuals or portray them in living history, they become part of our lives. Imagine what Shara felt writing this book. MJ, I've thought about that so much. He must just have been living with Longstreet and Chamberlain and Lee and, even Harrison and Fremantle and Armistead and Hancock.
And you speak well of Fremantle.
Yes, he did. And the thing is like, I said to my instructor, and I said this earlier on when we started doing this live stream, that I feel like I'm living with the ghost of Michael Shara right now, because I'm reading, stuff that a few letters that he wrote, but more so they're letters from his publishing company to him. But you do begin to feel like you're living with them. And I felt that way when we've been doing certain episodes, especially about generals, like that you do start to feel like they're with you. And you want to tell their story. And it's clear that, this for Shara was a very personal thing. And like I said, he's got that quote where he said, I'm not writing for the reader. He's doing this for himself.
Of course. I mean, if you're going to write a book, you want to entertain yourself. That's the whole point. I mean, you can, we've said this a billion times. Any book you ever read, you're going to get the author's spin. Because he wants to tell the story.
And he says that clearly in his introduction. He said, this is not like the Gettysburg you learned in school. Basically, this is my take on it. The interpretation and dialogue is my own. And he put it in dialogue that he felt in the 1970s that people would understand. Well, today that translates very well. This is a book that I'm reading it again. You can give it to anybody and they will understand what the characters are talking about. And good for him for getting away from the language they might have used. That's very much breaking away from how historical fiction traditionally is. He breaks away from that. and it makes a very accessible read where the characters are very human. You find out very early on that Longstreet has lost children. You know, and it's very much, you know, that first scene with Chamberlain, he's got basically heat stroke. You know, he's sleeping and Kilrain comes to wake him up. Frank said Chamberlain made his wife call him Governor because he admired Warren so much.
Because what?
Because he admired Warren so much. Governor, Governor.
That's what I was. That's pretty cool being called governor. I gotta say that's like I could totally deal with that. But no, but it's. I mean, again, you look at anybody who writes a book in any aspect, you're putting your soul out there. You're talking about what's in your heart. That's what any good book, any good author is going to write about is about their feelings. But I like the book. I think it's a good book. I mean, I was into the Civil War before the movie, before the book. So I obviously read Kilrain a couple of times, and it's funny because you mentioned Scott Hartwig, right?
Yep.
The former superintendent at Gettysburg, and he,
you know, this clear on the screen here. This is his guide to. And
he's a guy. Scott Hartwig is probably the most knowledgeable person on the planet in the Battle of Gettysburg. He just is, right? But he and I had a similar experience. I wasn't a big fan of Kilrain the first time I read it. I thought it was flowery. It was a cake with all frosting. It told a lot of things that didn't make sense. But then I read it again later and I said, you know what? This book is really, really good because if anything, it's going to give people, this is the people who forget the movie. This is just the book. It's if you read that, it's going to put a face on the names. We're used to seeing that's rigid face of Robert E. Lee or George Meade. If you even heard of George Meade, and so you see these people, these dour, sour, miserable looking people. Okay, kind of like an Indians fan today. Same thing, right? But what the book did is it gave them a personality.
Yeah.
And unless you really read a lot of the bios or the stories, you don't realize they even have personalities, right? And that's what the book did, is it put a face to them. And the movie
changed the way
the movie built on that. And it's so funny is people don't like Martin Sheen for a million reasons. So I love Martin Sheen.
Oh my God, I love Martin Sheen.
Most people who don't like Sheen is because of political reasons, admittedly. But the thing about Sheen is he really captured the stories of Lee's personality, that aloofness, that type of questioning, that confidence, but kind of bashfulness. That was what Lee was, versus the other movies, the Gods and Generals one, where he's much more like Patton.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's what the book did, and that's what the movie really, really did.
Yeah,
is it made these people humans.
Exactly, and that's
probably why people like it so much.
Pardon?
It's why people like it so much.
Exactly,
it humanizes. Exactly.
And MJ said we sympathize with Shara's characters in the book. Exactly, you sympathize with them because you know what? They're not talking. The one thing that you're in the midst of a battle in this book. The battle is happening, but it's not a lot of tactics that are being talked about. It's a lot of kind of the human emotions, the portrayal, the dialogue between the characters, the relationships between them. And it doesn't mention, I've heard it, they don't really talk about the causes of the war much. They do a little bit, Chamberlain side of it. But the thing is that it's kind of like you're viewing it in real time. So you're seeing things from Lee's perspective. You're seeing things from Longstreet's perspective. You're seeing things from Buford's perspective and Hancock's perspective and Chamberlain's perspective and Armistead's. And you're basically like Shara's daughter Lila said, you're being put in their shoes. Just to paraphrase her, but she also said that he wanted to tell a story which was very human, that, you realize these guys are suffering as well in the battle. But
what the book does well, and I'm not surprised we're talking about Kilrain as you're doing your story and your presentation for school, but you can understand why Garnett, why he did what he did at Pickett's Charge, because he's coming off of Kernstown, Kernstown's a year before, but he's still looking for personal, to reclaim his reputation. Why he has to do what he does. and he did it. It was a death march, but he had to restore his
Yeah.
reputation because of how he felt because of the whole thing with Stonewall. Stonewall handed out court martials like candy on Halloween. That's the thing, is he just did. You get a court martial, you get a court martial, you get a court martial, right? That's what he did. But Garnett, like Michael Jordan, he took that personally.
Yeah.
And so he ended up
I don't blame him.
he ended up doing that. And that's what the movie captures it, where who knows that those RSN conversations happen with Fremantle and stuff like that. But you knew Garnett had a personal baggage that he had to do this.
Yeah.
You're trying to the movie talks about how Armistead's talking to Longstreet about tell Garnett not to make the charge and all that. But Garnett had to do it because he had to do it, because it goes back to the honor thing.
Yeah.
And that's where the book captures it. Because if you don't see that, if you don't see that and you don't study it, you don't give a shit about it. You don't study Kernstown. You don't know why he did that. Yeah. You do it because you did it, but you don't know what the personal angst these guys all had. Why Beauregard rode the front at Shiloh.
Yeah.
Why he did that. Why they did all these things. Why Kearney had to go to the front at Chantilly. Because there's a reason why. Nobody wants to die. Nobody wants to. But there comes a point when death is not the worst option for some of these guys. And that's what happens to a lot of these people. Look at Gus's Van Horn Ellis at Gettysburg, Orange Blossom Brigade, right?
Yeah.
He felt that he had to show his men bravery that day, right? So he had to ride down against the first Texas. Jerome Robertson's guys, these hard-fighting Texans, unlike the Rangers, who quit, by the way, not for nothing, Ben, just saying. But he had to fight against them.
Yeah.
And so he had, with him and his subordinate Cromwell, the men have to see us today. It's all about honor, and the book captures that. And that's what's good about it, is the humanization about it.
Yeah, it's a very, you read and I wish Michael Shara had lived a little longer, so maybe we could have had more Civil War books from him. But, his son Jeff has kind of carried on that legacy. His books are just as good as his father's. MJ mentions she absolutely agrees with the taking Garnett. I'm learning more about him. Eyewitness accounts had Garnett getting out of an ambulance leaders brigade on July 3rd. I've read that too, that he was not doing very well. For him to even get on a horse was something.
He didn't want to. He had to.
He had to. Yeah.
And that just goes to show his background. Now, a lot of dudes, we mentioned George Sykes at this battle of Bristow Station. Okay, he's gone. He's out of here. But there are certain people, and this is why when you see these Medal of Honor people, these dudes who just do this incredible things, does the moment pop into their head at that very moment? And if the same thing were to happen a week later, would they do it again?
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes it's spur of the moment, but when you look at a guy like Richard Garnett, he felt that his personal honor, his family's honor, depended on that charge that day.
Yeah.
Now, whether you can look back and say, well, that was stupid, that didn't make any sense, but at that moment, it was the most important thing in his life. You can hate the Confederacy, you can hate Garnett, you can hate everything about them, but you got to understand, there's an honor with this. And he charged that because of his personal honor, and he paid the price for it. But you know something? I don't think he would want it any other way. And I think he knew that was going to happen, but he felt he had to do it. That's what's cool about it. That's why he
had to prove it. And in the other books that are written in the Western Theater trilogy that Jeff Shara does, Smoke at Dawn, which is probably my favorite book by him. The opening chapter with William Sherman is Sherman talking about a letter he wrote to somebody, and he's openly mourning his son still. And he's still crying about his son. Yeah. So you recognize that he's going to Chattanooga with the death of his son, Willie, in his head. That not only is he having to deal with opening the Cracker Line, with helping Grant out, with doing all this battle stuff, and he's going to go and fight Missionary Ridge, not his best day, but he's doing this and he's still mourning the loss of his child. And he's admitting in a letter to this one guy, he's not going to get over it. He's still not over it. He's still crying about it. And it's so And so Jeff Shara in his research went back to those letters that Sherman was writing. And I've read some of those letters that he wrote to his wife. And he's saying, I'll never get over this. Nobody will ever replace Willie for me. And the other thing that Shara does in the final book in the Western Theater is Hardy's opening chapter is Hardy reading the papers and finding out that Clayburn is dead.
Mhm.
And it starts it off on such a human thing that these guys are not just they're not just going into battle and be like, what are we going to do today? They're having to carry this baggage with them. So you find out very quickly that Hardy is killing this baggage of losing his best friend in a battle that he thought was unnecessary.
Yeah,
And
and and to bring this back to Bristow Station, Mary. See this, okay? Is you see this and you sit and you study. Well, why the hell did AP Hill attack when he didn't reconnoiter, when he didn't prepare? And you can probably, the reality is he probably did because he felt that he was a ghost at the Battle of Gettysburg and he had to redeem himself to Lee. And I think when Lee was laying him out the next day and he was giving him that hard time, and then he backed off, I think he realized, there's an old saying that says losing hurts more than winning feels good, right? And I think that he probably saw that situation where although he felt in his mind that the Fifth Corps was the bottom that he was going to attack, that he felt he had to redeem himself. Redemption, we've talked about this, is probably the most common theme in any of these episodes we've done. And you can, almost every single one, you can find a guy who did something. We talk about AP Hill at Antietam many times, right? These people do things because they felt out of honor for whatever reason. The people are different now than they were back then. Back then, honor meant a lot more than it does today. People are more individually focused now. They care about themselves. They don't give a shit what anybody else thinks. It's all about number one, right? But back then, it was a big deal, especially in the military.
Yeah.
And not to diminish the military now. I know it probably still is the case now, but I mean, as far as the average people I know, people I work with, they wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire, as long as it benefits them. That's all it matters about. And that's the thing is it's and that's what's great about studying the Civil War, is because you can see these personal stories. And if you're studying the Civil War and you're reading Battle Cry of Freedom and you're reading Coddington, you're reading Freeman, all these stories, but you're not reading the diaries and you're missing the human elements of it all, you're missing the party, because that's where the goods are, is these human stories.
And that's where Michael Shara went. He didn't read, I'm sure he read the nonfiction stuff that, was kind of the secondary sources. He goes to primary sources, and, he had one quote where he was like, I want to tell Lee like he really was. And he said that in doing that, and he read every single letter Lee wrote during the Civil War.
Yeah.
And he said in doing that, he got to know who Lee was, and he felt like, okay, now I can tell his story because I know who this man was. And, he spent 7 years writing this book. That's incredible. That you think 1964, he goes on a trip to Gettysburg. He's got the kids with him, he's got his wife, and there's actually on YouTube, you can find it. There is a film of them on this trip.
Yeah.
That you can see, and there's one part where they're by the high water mark, and you can see his two kids, Lila and Jeff Shara, they're walking around it and stuff, and it's really neat to see. But that's just, this trip is inspiring him. But he's got the letters with him, and he's, one of his heroes is Chamberlain, and he felt at the time in scholarship, Chamberlain didn't have a voice, and he wanted to tell that story of what he did at Little Round Top. And I have come to respect that part of the novel more.
Well, he had a voice, but the problem is he got lost to history. I mean, back in his Passing of the Armies was a very popular book, and once he was governor of Maine. I mean, this is a guy who did a lot of things, presidents of Bowdoin College. Yeah, but history forgot him. He died, and as much you go to visit his grave over there, not far from the college over there, Bowdoin. Yeah. It's a very nondescript.
It's very humble.
It's not a lot to it. Not a lot of people visit it. I mean, it is what it is. But the movie in the book has brought him back to life again. Now there's the Joshua Chamberlain rest stop not far from his town. There's that whole fake Little Round Top that's there. Everything is Chamberlain. There's Joshua's Tavern. You go and see, there's a big statue of him right outside of his house. His house is a great visit, by the way.
It is really cool because that table. Bjorn's on here from Abraham Lincoln Bookshop, and he said, "Love the Killer Angels Talk. Such a fun novel." Yes, it's very and I mean, someday I want to get a first edition.
They're available on eBay, whatever.
Someday I'm going to buy one because I
It's
really
like
would love
$8
to
on eBay. Buy one.
Is that $8?
It's cheap. You can buy
Alright.
it first. I'm not talking about whatever. But no,
There
it's
was one edition though that was released by his publisher that has, so it's got this woman and she's got her arms around a Confederate soldier and a Union soldier. So you would look at that cover and you'd think, wow, is this about a love triangle?
well, that
Apparently Michael Shara, when he saw that, he was like, you need to stop, no more. So those ones are very hard to find.
No, but I think what the book really was, and the movie was for this point too, was almost reconciliation between the two.
Yeah.
Because it made the Confederates tragic heroes.
Mhm.
It did, and whether it's by definition or by happenstance, that's what it did.
But the thing is I would not deem the book as being lost cause at all. It's telling it from the Southerners' perspective.
No, there's that one campfire scene where they kind of diminish slavery a little bit being an issue, and there was a little bit of that, but I'll tell you who would hate the movie is Lowell Armistead, because it made him look at this weepy, thing.
Yeah, and he was not that way at all.
He was, by all accounts, he was a miserable, curmudgeon-y, miserable person, kind of like you in the morning. That's probably how he was, and so this weepy, him getting all teary-eyed, but verklempt, because of different things that happened. And I don't think that jive with him. I don't think he saw his friendship with Hancock as all that. No. I think he saw them as a coworker. These guys didn't go to West Point together. These guys they were on Los Angeles together a little bit, but I think the movie took that, and there was that one article that came out that really put the two together. Yeah. And he took that, and Tom McMillan writes that in his book about Armistead. Yeah. He talks about where that source came from. But I think if he came back, and if Hancock came back, I think they would be mortified at how this movie portrayed them.
Yeah.
I think they were nothing more than coworkers. I think they were people, they respected each other, but I don't think they thought twice about each other. One thing that never happened was he never tried to get a flag or truce to go meet him at the battle. I don't think he cared less about Hancock being there and vice versa. Now, the whole thing with the diary, the Bible is true, it Pickett's charge, but I think that was because he knew that if he got the book to Hancock, after he gets shot, Thomas Bingham's there and the whole Masonic story and all that. But I think he knew that he could give the book to Bingham to get it to Hancock, and Hancock would get it back to his family. I think that's why, because he knew Hancock knew the family. I think that's why that he did that. And there's a good book about Freemasonry and the Civil War that talks a lot about that, how that whole thing is very much overblown. But it's a big story. And why he did it with Tom Chamberlain, well, who the hell knows? But that's how Michael Shara chose to tell the story, to tie it all together.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, this is Shara's telling of the Battle of Gettysburg, and his son Jeff is quite clear in his introductions to his books about saying, this is my interpretation. This is just, we don't know exactly what happened, but still he's having to put a lot of research into it, especially, like I said, my favorite is The Smoke at Dawn, about the battles for Chattanooga. The way he writes Sherman, David Maxwell commented on this, the way he writes Sherman in that whole series it's brilliant. He captures the character of Sherman so well, but especially that scene where Sherman is still mourning the loss of his son is sad. It's real. And the way he captures Claiborne, he has Claiborne, Claiborne has just he's having to be on a horse more, and it's written so that Claiborne's inner monologue is like, I have to be on this horse now because I'm an officer of such a rank, and he hates being on the horse because he didn't like horses.
No. Well, Grant didn't like horses either, which is ironic because he was a great cavalier back at West Point. So who knows,
Yeah, David says poor Tom Chamberlain. Yeah, Tom Chamberlain, that's a tragic. He died of alcoholism, right?
Yeah, about 10 or so years ago, a friend of mine, she worked for a TV station up in Maine, WABI. It was right around the time when Joshua Chamberlain's Medal of Honor was found. And she messaged me, and she wanted to know some stuff about the Chamberlains. And she messaged me, she goes, I heard, I forget how she phrased it, but Caitlin said, did you know that Joshua Chamberlain had a brother? Well, he had two brothers in the back. But I go, you need to look into Thomas Chamberlain. This is a guy who kind of fell off, he kind of fell off the grid, had died of alcoholism. But she's like, yeah, you need to look into Thomas Chamberlain more. And she's from Maine, and she went to school there, and she was working up there, and she says it's all Joshua. But she looked into Thomas after, and she's like, it's amazing no one knows his story, because he has a very sad story.
Yeah.
And Chamberlain's wife Fanny was no picnic, by the way. That's the other thing.
No.
I mean, she was a popular with the fellas at Bowdoin. We'll leave it at that.
Something about the football team.
Yeah, she certainly was. But again, when you look at the human stories of these people, you can sort of see the pain.
Yeah.
I mean, Thomas Chamberlain probably had PTSD. There's no question he probably did.
Oh, after the tour we did at the Chamberlain house, I completely agree with that.
I mean, after the war, he basically climbs into a bottle and never gets out of it. So that the shit these people saw, I mean, you saw Buster, get shot. How miserable that must have been. The bloody armpit. We love him, Mary.
People that think
he was there when he died.
I still
he said to say goodbye. So Thomas had been through a lot. But no, if the real Thomas, he's not even buried near Joshua. He's buried at the part of Maine. He might be buried. Where the hell is he buried? He's not buried
in he's buried in the same cemetery.
He's buried in Bangor, isn't he?
Yeah. For some reason, I seem to think some of Howard's relatives are up there.
I think he's buried in Bangor.
Yeah.
Which is not far from Castine, which is where Charles Tilden is.
Oh, no, wait, he's buried in the same cemetery as Charles Tilden, I think.
Yeah, so he's in Castine. I thought he was. I knew he was up. If you're up to Bangor, you're up by Santa's Workshop. I mean, you're way the hell up there.
I thought that was in Canada.
No, Bangor, Maine. I mean, honest to God, you Northern Lights in the middle of the day up there. But that's a great little brewery scene. We're going to Bangor today. We're going to go up there. We're supposed to go there. Oro Brewing is a great place. Anyway, are you ready to jump off here pretty soon? What do you think?
Yes. Yeah, soon, because I got to work on my paper more.
Some good college football today too. Go watch some stuff. Some good college hockey tonight too. So we'll see what happens. I think it's more baseball. I don't know if baseball's going on today. I think they're taking a break tonight. I don't know, but we'll see what happens. Stupid Texas Rangers. My God, horrible. I want to see Texas against Arizona just because. I think Arizona's going to win the whole thing. By the way, watch out for them. Yeah, watch out for them.
Bill Colonel Darling.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's jump off.
How much of that dialogue from the book is taken and put into the movie?
Well, it's fun. There's a lot of scenes. I mean, the Buster scene talking about with Chamberlain about the killer angels isn't even in the damn book. It's just fascinating how certain things are put into it and certain things are not put into it. But in any case, so we'll go with that. So what's coming up for us next? We got a lot of stuff coming up down the line.
So we have our Halloween episode coming up. That's going to be our next episode. Not too sure when it's going to be dropping. We're going to be recording that with Jay Price, who their 4th Halloween episode. Thursday, the 26th. So this Thursday, we are having a book club with Lisa Samia to talk about her new Nameless and Faceless poetry book, which came out, I think, back in April. Mm-hmm. It's Gettysburg, Manassas, and More. And after that, so after our Halloween episode, we're going to try and come up with an episode to do about the 160th for the Battles for Chattanooga. Some aspect of that is what we want to talk about. So we have to figure out something with that. Bjorn, good to see you guys. Yes, good to see you too, Bjorn. And just real quick, guys, like if you're not following Abraham Lincoln Bookshop on Twitter, or not Twitter, sorry, Facebook, follow them. They do really great live streams with authors. Also, they did one the other day talking about their new catalog and all that. So Bjorn's a really great guy. He's one of our sponsors for not just these live streams we do on weekends, but also for our roundtables when we have trivia. He is the one that, if y'all want a book from us, it's because of Bjorn. So thank him for that.
Bjorn is the man, so no question about that. So Halloween's coming up. We got the book club coming up here next week. So we got a lot of fun stuff coming. It's October is my favorite month. It's a great time of the year, so we'll enjoy that. So we got a day full of shenanigans for us today. Gotta go hit the brewery today and watch some football. It's gonna be our day.
And after, I just want to say to you, if you guys are planning ahead in mid-November, I think it's November 15th, we are having Tom Huntington on to discuss his book, Main Roads to Gettysburg. So that's going to be our last book for 2023. we're going to be having him on to talk about that. So that's really awesome that he's agreed to do that with us as
Yeah,
well.
and we'll be releasing our 2024 book clubs where
Yes,
we're talking.
decide on those books.
We have to decide. We have those books. We got some people lined up. We got some good stuff. Tom Huntington's book on Maine is great. Gettysburg, people are going to love that one because it's all about Gettysburg and it talks about McGilvery and not, talk about Tilden and talks about all these guys,
Howard?
Greenleaf Stevens, Oliver S. Howard, all these people that was beyond the obvious Chamberlain. So we'll look forward to that. All right. So let's jump off. You guys have a great rest of the weekend. Stay safe, stay dry. Hopefully your football team wins. Mine won't, but whatever.
So
But
we'll probably be back with you guys probably next Sunday because we have something going on next Saturday. So we'll probably do
Yeah.
that. Yeah, we're going to the Bruins game.
Yeah, 7:00 at night.
Oh, I guess. Yeah. So maybe we'll be back on Saturday.
We'll see. We'll figure it out. I'm going to binge. You're planning to have it on Saturday for that Bruins Red Wings game next Saturday. So we'll have fun with that. All right, guys. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll talk to you all